Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Strategy with Jason. Today, it's a very special episode. As you can see, we are on site with the one, the only, the oh-so-famous Mr. Ian MacDonald. Ian, what's going on? How you doing, man?
I'm good. That's quite an intro.
Did you like that?
I did like that. So I hope I can live up to that. But no, look, everything's good. It's a Friday morning, which is always good, and it's nearly Christmas. So yeah, feeling good and happy to be here with you, Jason.
Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. We got some really cool topics to go over. But hey, before we get into the weeds of everything, I love to start off every podcast with a little origin story because I'm super curious myself. All right, how did you get started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry?
Yeah, what a great question. So I guess like for me, marketing is my thing, as that's my day job. But yes, in the automotive industry with Trader, but I'm a marketer first and foremost. And for me, it was not easy actually getting into marketing or automotive. So I mean, look, going way back academically and whatnot, like at school and university, I was really keen on mathematics, but also kind of keen on English literature and creativity and stuff like that, which is, at the time, I thought, an unusual skill combination, but it's actually, now I find, it's a great combination for a marketer because everything's so digital these days, you need the numbers, and a little bit of creativity helps too. But right out of university, I was actually a trainee actuarial assistant, so I was studying to be an actuary.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can say this because I spent some time in the discipline that they say that sort of actuarial is for people who find accountancy too exciting. So it lasted about a year, and then I really want to get into marketing. I want to get into advertising and that kind of thing. But it was so hard. Like every job you apply for, there's hundreds of applicants. Even you want to go agency side, you had to work for free for a year and all this kind of thing, and just wasn't really happening. And then I was actually at my sister's birthday party. I was about 22, and I was talking to a friend of hers and saying, I really want to get into marketing and advertising, but it's not really happening. And she said, why don't you consider a graduate training scheme? Because she was on one at the time. And she said, because if you get a graduate training scheme at a big company, you can do what you like. You say, I'm interested in marketing, you get dropped in, great. So I thought that's a good idea. And so she referred me to one for Royal Bank of Scotland, which at the time was pre-2008, was sort of the third or fourth biggest bank in the world. And so,
Not a bad place to start.
I applied to that graduate scheme and got accepted there. And it was great. That's when it started happening. So they said, what do you want to do? I said, marketing. So they had all these big brands spending tens of millions of dollars every year. Big consumer-facing brands over in the UK. And so it was great. I spent 2 or 3 years working on 4 or 5 different brands, like an accelerator kind of thing, and finally kind of got my wish. And then, to be honest, I mean, after a few years of that, it was financial services. So, as a marketer, the red tape is a bit of a killer, especially with all the kind of FSA stuff. And so, I started looking around at other things that might be of interest. And Autotrader UK were looking for a digital marketing manager. And I thought, wow, everyone knows Autotrader because it's similar to Canada. They're in the UK. It's been around similar length of time. Was known then very much as a magazine. And they had a website and they were trying to grow it. But they were trying to digitize the whole thing and retire the magazine. So joined them and spent 3 years with them, basically accelerating the digital expertise, a lot of marketing, advertising, building the brand. And then after about 3 or 4 years, the role over here in Canada came up, Autotrader Canada. And they were a couple of years behind the UK on that trajectory in terms of that migration. So a few of us from the UK business came over to Canada, including our CEO, Sebastian Baldwin. And yes, I came over to Canada to consult with, to begin with, in November 2011.
That's how they conned you, right?
They did. Well, they picked the wrong time of year because I got here in November and I thought, I didn't even know it was possible for things to get that cold. So I didn't even know what January and February is like over here. But no, it was great. So I spent 2 weeks getting to know the business and all that kind of stuff. And then I came back in 2012 and accepted a role and spent the next 4 years with Autotrader Canada, growing the brand and doing the advertising and TV and digital, all that good stuff. And I mean, we made incredible strides in those 4 years.
At that time, I mean, you must like pain, by the way, because I remember the industry at that time and just convincing people to not only have a website, but also just to embrace any type of digital marketing, what do you mean? It's not a newspaper? But I can't physically hold it? What are you talking about? And I mean, I remember at that time being told, well, this internet thing's a fad. It's just going to fade away. So I know how challenging it was. So yeah, you must love pain.
It's been a journey. Yeah, I'll say that.
Well, speaking of journeys, a lot of things have changed recently, right? Talk about journeys, Our industry has probably seen more change just in the last 20 some odd months than we probably have collectively in the 10 years before that. But I'd love to kind of get your take on, what is the kind of industry as you see it today?
Yeah, so I mean, you're exactly right. I suppose it's like a lot of different verticals, isn't it? And it's such an overused phrase, unprecedented, but it's overused because it's kind of true. But yeah, I mean, in terms of what we've been seeing from the automotive side of things, it's, I mean, essentially, since the onset, we had a kind of funny 6 to 8 weeks where nobody knew what was happening, and consumer demand did drop off a little bit, and then they just roared back to life, right? Like from a consumer demand standpoint, and maybe we'll go into some metrics later that we've seen, but the demand's been incredible, and we've done a bunch of research and all that stuff. Why is that? It's the stuff you'd expect. Sure. People don't want to use public transit anymore. They like their space, they want to be in the car, that kind of stuff. They don't want to use ride sharing. Actually, some of our sort of research suggests that that's here to stay, some of that mindset. But then, of course, the big thing is the shutdown of the new car production and the knock-on effects that's going to have in terms of lower new car sales there in 2020 and 2021, but also the inventory pool. So that's one of the biggest trends that we've been seeing is, wow, the demand's really great. Inventory is beginning to be a little bit more constrained.
Yeah, it's interesting times like this when things are really good. And it's times like these where you start seeing kind of that cream rise to the top as far as like who kind of really are the operators out there and kind of who aren't. Yeah. I mean, look, face it, there have been a lot of people in our industry that have been able to make a lot of money and survive on just amazing brands and amazing products. And then all of a sudden, we take that inventory away from them, and they got to get real. Yeah. I mean, they got to get real about their operations, got to get real about their people. And I'm sure you've probably seen some of this going on as well right now. What do you think? I'm just curious. Yeah. I'll go squirrel sometimes, by the way. What do you think just in the last 18, 20 months, what do you think is the biggest impact, to the industry that will stick around?
That's a great question. The biggest impact? Well, I suppose there's probably a couple of things. Yeah. So
there's a lot. That's what I say. I know. I'm going to stick you.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the main things, and again, it's talked about a lot, but I do think this sort of digital retail thing, look, it was there, it was bubbling away, for 4 years maybe.
Yeah, it was kind of just stewing there for a little bit before this.
And I think there has been an acceleration of that for sure. Listen, I mean, I think sometimes, frankly, it's a bit overstated, especially as well gets back to
I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you said it.
Absolutely. So, but I do think that as we were seeing some of these pure play digital dealers come into the market, they're spending some money, sort of advertising themselves, whether users are ready or not to 100% transact online. And look, a lot of them are. I've seen the research, but some of them are. The vast majority are expecting a higher level of convenience, a higher, more seamless omni-channel journey between online and offline. So even if it's not immediately going straight to 100% transaction, I think it's changed consumer expectation. I think that is going to have a lasting impact on a lot of, let's call them traditional dealerships in terms of the way that they service customers. Yes. Even if it's not going to be like a huge amount of demand for 100% transacting online, the omni-channel thing, that's a shift that's not going away.
No, I'm with you on that. I think that we finally got a taste for that, and I don't see us going back. I see that shift. What I kind of call it is we've gone away from a selling process, right, where we had like these are our 12 points and this is how we sell, to now a buying process where we actually now giving the customer options on how to buy. Like my favorite analogy is Best Buy. I do a lot of Best Buy, by the way. Like I'm pretty bad at the apps on my phone. It's just I need that new microphone or something, and I do it. But I love the options, right? I can reserve it and then go take a look at it, touch it, feel it, and make sure I actually want to buy it. Or I can buy it, I can pick it up because I'm good with or I can buy it and have it shipped to my house. But they give me options. Yeah. And I'm with you. I hope as an industry that, that those options don't go away. Even though, like you said, there's a percentage of people that are taking advantage of it. I think that will just continue to grow, but I'm with you. How do you think, the last 18 months and some of these big snowballs that we've seen kind of build up, overall, how do you think that's going to impact the dealer specifically?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I was going to say short term, but it could even sort of turn into more of a medium term thing.
Yeah.
I think the inventory thing is obviously key for dealers. I think there was a good 12-month period there where the prices were cooking. As I understand it, I was run a dealership. As I understand it, the margins were nice. The metal was moving and stuff. And now I think it's becoming a little bit harder to source some inventory, right? Like maybe the volume of transactions is not being offset by that increase in margin. So how long is that going to stick around? I mean, I listen to a lot of kind of industry stuff, as I'm sure you do. It's a tough one. I mean, my kind of view from talking to folks and listening to things is that the production's getting back to normal. As that production gets back to normal, it's going to be able to satisfy that new car demand that's out there. As the new cars get sold, I think it's 70% of them have a trade-in, so that's the used inventory being stimulated. And you'd hope to see kind of back half of next year that things are getting back to normal a little bit, but nobody really has a crystal ball and that stuff. And I think as well, one of the things I was going to mention was, I was listening to, I think it was Ford's kind of quarterly call the other day, and they were saying about, well, maybe we don't want to have a huge inventory pool of vehicles anymore. Maybe we want to move to more of a kind of build-to-order European model. They like, having a little fewer incentives because they're not sort of always trying to push through all this metal that they've manufactured. Is that going to stick around? Does that mean that the new car inventory pool is going to be permanently lower than it was historically? I'm not sure, maybe. So yeah, I mean, I think the inventory thing is a short to medium term thing. And as well as I said, the consumer expectation, and I think you nailed it exactly right. It's about optionality. That is the key. Because you have a whole spectrum of users, and we do research all the time with all the users on the site and off-site as well with partners like Ipsos and whatnot. And it's a real spectrum. There's some people we speak to that say, no, I love it. I want to go in the dealership. I want to haggle. I want to negotiate. I touch the thing. I want to know the guy and shake his hand. And they're not changing. They don't want to configure something at home. Right at the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who say, I never want to set foot in a dealership again. You've got to give me 100%. And yeah, they're the ends of the bell curve, but in between, you've got this whole spectrum. So exactly as you said, more optionality you have, the wider you can cast your net, and the more different types of people you can convert.
Now, I think from a marketing perspective, that makes it super challenging, right? Because if you think about it, up until this point, 90+% of our marketing efforts have been vehicle-specific messaging.
Yeah.
Even though we've tried to push more branding, we tried to push more storytelling, but just in the industry, we just kind of fell into that. Now, not only did it kind of our operations kind of implode and kind of force us or push us, maybe not force us, but push us into a direction of creating all these options, on the marketing side, it's not so simple anymore. It's not this singular message of like, hey, we got cars, here's the payment, here's the interest rate, come buy them, right? Those options and everything in between creates all these unique stories. So I'd love to kind of get your take on how do you think this has impacted kind of marketing strategies and messages moving forward?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you hit on a few interesting things there. How has it impacted things? Well, I guess like some of the things that you're talking about there, it's so interesting. When I speak to dealers, one of the things I sort of try and emphasize for them, at least kind of historically, has been the idea of inbound and outbound, right? So inbound is the stuff where users, they're looking for a vehicle, they're looking for something that you offer, so they're searching for it on Google or whatever it may be, and or using a marketplace, for example. And it's about putting your product in front of them, yes, with the right kind of brand positioning and the right kind of messages around that vehicle, but you're harnessing that existing interest inbound towards you. And then on the outbound side of things, of course, it's generally untargeted. You're kind of going out there and you're trying to interrupt people's day by saying, "Hey, do you need a car?" That's your radio and your print and your billboards and TV and that kind of stuff. So I mean, I've always been a big advocate when I've spoken to dealerships around like get the inbound machine like absolutely cooking.
Yeah, get that just nailed down.
Absolutely, because I mean that really is that's where the margin's going to be and I mean, listen, there's absolutely a role for the other stuff, but you don't want to be neglecting that stuff, that inbound stuff, because it's generally, well, I mean, it is lower cost per lead, and therefore the ROI is higher and all that stuff. So get those things absolutely cooking before you think too much about the outbound stuff. But one thing that you mentioned about storytelling, and this is something else I kind of sort of try to unpack, is sometimes I'll speak to dealers and say, well, what's the role of brand? People tell me that my brand's important. I got to work on my brand. I'm like, yeah, okay, so what do we mean by that?
Exactly.
Right, so
let's unpack that because there's a lot there.
It's a very broad church. Right? So within that statement, do we mean brand response advertising? Because listen, I mean, and the role of brand response advertising is to create saliency and kind of top of mind, and that you're carpet bombing, right? So that when someone thinks they have a trigger, a lifestyle change, I need a car, they think, I know where to go for a car.
Yep.
And I would sort of say, a lot of that stuff, that's a tough sell, I think, for a dealership or even a group. It's tough because how are you're taking on the Googles?
Because it doesn't fall into my 30-day goal and objective that I've received by my manufacturer, right? Yeah, it's hard pill to swallow.
There's that, and also it's kind of you've got to carve out a really great value proposition to create that saliency. And also, as I said, you're competing with what are the most salient kind of brands for when majority of Canadians think I need a car? It's Google, it's Autotrader. Yeah. That's where they go. When we do our research, sort of 2/3 of Canadians, the case is they say, well, I go Autotrader. That's where I start, upper funnel. So to try and sort of compete with that, that's tough. So brand response advertising, that's something that, maybe kind of think really hard about that because it's expensive too. And it takes a lot of time, as you said.
It's a field of dreams. It's a build it and they will come scenario.
Yeah. and when I do see dealer groups doing that kind of stuff and on TV and things like that. And sometimes I sort of look at the ads and I think, well, that's a great ad for car ownership. You're saying your value prop is car ownership is good.
Yes.
And good news, 85% of adult Canadians agree with you, but that doesn't mean they're going to choose you. that's just an ad for owning a car.
Yep.
What's your positioning? What's your value prop? So that's one thing. But then what I do think is really important for dealerships, all dealerships, is in that broad church, what else do we have? Well, we also have kind of brand strategy. What's your positioning? What's your value proposition? We have branding, being consistent, it looks professional, all the different touch points, and not just visually, also in terms of the salespeople, how you're training them.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people think branding is just a marketing play, but it is just as much an operations as it is marketing. They have to connect to each other.
100%. I mean, I'd actually say that the visual stuff is the easier stuff.
Yeah.
You get something that fits your positioning, whatever it may be. If it's, we're really focused on customer service, or we're really focused on price, or whatever your kind of niche is going to be. It's not that hard to kind of design assets and language and have things that are consistent. What's hard is actually getting it through the DNA of the organization.
Yeah, actually executing on it.
Well, when somebody calls up or they walk in, that brand positioning is personified and exemplified by the employee, the person that's standing in front of them, and how you treat them and how you follow up. And I spent some time consulting outside of automotive on brand with companies in different verticals, and this is one of the hardest things. I say to them, look, we've got the brand strategy. Yeah. It's great here in the boardroom. You've got to make it live and breathe through every touch point. That includes people, that includes physical evidence, that includes, your brick and mortar, everything. That's the tough stuff. But that's where I think branding is really important. But so when we say my brand, I would say, and listen, it varies by size and that stuff. But I mean, in general, my kind, and for what it's worth, my kind of advice to dealerships is, okay, within brand, what I would say is, think about your brand as a conversion aid. It's something that once the user's with you, I feel good about this particular dealership because it feels like it's for me. I like the positioning. I like that it's very consistent. The guy gives them a good feeling, confidence they can follow through. It's a huge conversion aid. But what I wouldn't say is kind of worry too much about your brand acquiring users. You know what I mean? The inbound channels cook on that.
It's once they're kind of in your sphere, your bubble, right? It's what keeps them in there. Look, as an industry, we know what we do, all right? We move metal and we service metal. It's what we do, right? And we all know how we do it. It's the why we do it the way we do it. That's what gets super unique, and that's what a consumer sees value in. But getting a dealership to allocate the time and effort to kind of go through that self-awareness process of understanding, why do we do it the way we do it?
Yeah.
Why do we deliver the car that way? Why do we have 7 different ways you can buy a car? Why,
Yeah.
But it's important, and I think especially right now, defining that, embracing that, marketing that, coming out of what 2022 and 2023 is going to be as inventory, it's going to be a big opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, the other thing is, when you're talking about the inventory, that's true. Users will look for the vehicle sort of first and foremost. Because think how many dealerships that there are out there. There's so many brands competing. And I mean, nowadays, at least for now, while we still have cookies and whatnot, nowadays it's easy. We can all target auto intenders online with pretty good accuracy. And they're getting messages from the likes of Autotrader. They're getting messages from every dealer within 100 mile radius. It's very busy. And to be able to break out of that and kind of build a perception or a top of mind saliency with a user that when I need a car, I go to that dealership. That's really tough. So, but I mean, the vehicles are kind of becoming commoditized. I mean, users know where to go. It's the internet. they know where to go to see all the vehicles. The key
100%.
is, yes, having the right inventory for the right segment that you're looking for, and sure, pricing it right, and all merchandising, hugely important. But once you've got them in the tractor beam, it's about that brand. Who are you? What do you stand for? How do you train your folks to interact with them and reel them in? And even myself, as a marketer, I understand this. Well, you'd hope I understand this stuff, but we're all susceptible to it because it's human nature. I bought a Nissan last year, and listen, I mean, it's a new Nissan. There's a number of Nissan franchises. I was speaking to 2 or 3 of them.
There's 37 just within a 45-minute drive of here.
There you go. So that more than ever, because they all have the inventory, they all source the vehicle that I want.
Yeah.
But what it came down to was, I had a chat going with a couple of these dealerships, but there was one in particular. They just did a great job of no nonsense. They read me really well, that this sales guy, and I think part of the positioning of the dealership. We don't mess around. Listen. Here's what we can do, X, Y, and Z. It wasn't pressured, and it was a really great experience. And then, my circumstances changed. Yeah. I said, you know what, something's changed. I'm going to be out of the market for a couple of months. Okay, cool. This was great. I mean, really, I thought exemplary kind of lead nurturing. Not too much pressure, but the guy didn't let it go. Just every couple of weeks, there's a text, how's it going? And you're still thinking, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, buddy, I'm getting there. But when I came to pull the trigger 2-3 months later, he was the first and only call I made. Boom, we did the deal. 20 minutes. It's because we built that relationship.
Because that dealership empowered the staff to actually give them a chance to build that relationship. Yeah. When we focus on the relationships and not the transaction, amazing things happen. And I can't imagine how many people you've already referred to that dealership.
Yeah, exactly right. And like-minded people, because like I said, I mean, it's, every brand, every business, they should have a slightly different position. What are you about? And when I think in my mind, what are the words that come to mind when I think about that dealership? I think fair, no nonsense, efficient. Yeah. That's the positioning. Resonates with me. Might not resonate with everyone, but resonates with me. So that's what I mean by brand. I mean, that was a great example for me where the brand closed that deal. It wasn't the vehicle.
Exactly. Because you have 37 different locations you could have picked it up from.
Exactly.
But you know what's funny when it comes to brand? I talk to a lot of dealerships and they're like, well, I don't know what my brand is. And well, you do know what your brand is. The brand already exists. It's just in the eyes of the consumer. You haven't maybe necessarily defined what your brand is.
Well, if you don't define it, your customers will.
Yes, exactly, right? Well, go read Google reviews. It doesn't take long to see consistently used words like experience. I love the word experience, by the way, because you got good and you got bad, and it goes really both ways. So it's I try to find the reviews that only just have that word in it because I want to read everything around it, right? But you're right. The consumer will define the brand for the dealership if the dealership doesn't take the time and the initiative to define it for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And like we said, there's so many dealerships, there's so many sellers, and look, I mean, I can say this as a marketer because I think marketing is one of the least trusted professions when they do those surveys, and it's like lawyers, marketers,
right up there, car salesmen.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that there is a perception among consumers that dealerships are kind of one and the same, and it's more about the metal, and they're all going to try and true coat me and upsell me and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's such an opportunity for dealerships that get it right, who really do kind of set their stall out and say, this is what we're about. And as I said, you can feel it flow through every email you get from them, through the language on the website, through the way that the salesperson interacts with you. It stands out. Yeah. It's notable. And that actually kind of tells you how good a job most dealerships are doing about understanding who they are, who they want to be, and how they want the consumer to perceive them, because it really stands out when one of them really nails it.
And that's what I think makes this time in our industry so exciting. I mean, think about, for the last decade, we've been talking about merchandising. Can you believe that, we had to convince dealers to actually put their inventory? I'm sure you guys went through all that pain. You actually got to put it online. It needs to be online.
I mean, but we still do in terms of quality of merchandising. Really? Well, I mean, obviously we have thousands of dealers on there, and obviously it's a spectrum from ones that really lean in and get it. And I mean, listen, the VDP, it's beautiful. Great pictures, great description, well-written headline, not all caps. But when they merchandise well, I mean, we see it in terms of the response, the lead conversion, and then through our match report, and we see the sales as well that they generate from the presence on Autotrader, and it makes a meaningful difference.
Yeah.
And we actually have a team that kind of works with dealers and coaches them on that to be like, I know it's quicker or more efficient to whatever, but when you really take the time to merchandise really well, it makes a huge difference to the ROI you get from advertising with us, sure, but also on your own website and all your advertising and different things that you're doing.
Well, and it's cool that we're kind of, I think, in that era of we've embraced merchandising, well, at least majority of
Yeah,
it.
we're getting
And
there.
you know, and now we're able to start layering on this really cool thing called branding. It's like you got your merchandising set, and now you start layering on your branding, you know, propositions and the value to the consumer, and it's like you can become a real powerhouse. Now, look, I know we could probably jam about this for a whole nother hour or so,
Sure.
but I know we're getting towards the tail end of our time, and there was one last thing I did want to kind of chat with you before I let you go.
Okay.
Oh, look, we're here in the Trader office. It definitely looks like there's a lot of things have changed since maybe the last time I was here. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what's been the last 20 months like for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great. How long have you got?
How long have you got? As long as you got.
It's listen. I mean, it's been a journey, but yeah, there are a couple of things that kind of stand out to me. Since the onset of the pandemic, I was just casting my mind back to, you know, I remember when it first became clear, and it seemed to all happen. Yeah, we've been hearing about this thing for a few months. It seemed to all get really real in a space of like 4 days. Offices were closed, and
I remember it was just after NADA.
Yeah, it was.
Remember, we just got back from NADA.
Yeah, everything was cool.
And everything was cool, and I remember people talking about it at NADA.
Yeah,
and then Me2 of coming back.
something like that. Yeah, so I mean, as you'll probably know, I mean, we took the decision pretty early on that we knew it was going to be. We didn't know how long or how tough, but we knew it was going to be tough. And we did a bunch of communication around this at the time that I won't kind of go over and over. But basically, we decided to go free on our website for 2 months. It wound up being 2 months, I think, or maybe 2.5 for the kind of core used offering and some of the other stuff. And then for new cars, it was a little bit longer. But you know, we looked at it and we were like, wow, you know. We do believe, of course, you know, our success and the dealer partner success, they're the same thing, right? They're inextricably linked. We can't be successful without the dealers, and I would like to say the dealers are less successful without us. I would like to say that based on the audience, but it's a symbiotic thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we both come together to create this incredible brand called Autotrader that consumers love and it's top of mind and all that good stuff. So the way we looked at it was, well, look, if it's going to be rough, it's going to be rough for all of us. So yeah, we went free for a couple of months, and during that time, the toughest decision was actually, so what do we do about expenses? Like, do we keep spending on all this consumer marketing and whatnot? Because, you know, it's a big investment.
Well, everybody went through the same process. Dealers did, vendors did, we all did, right?
And we went back and forth for a week or two, kind of, you know, the ups and the downs. And what we decided to do was to say, well, you know, we're going to kind of make a bet that this isn't going to last sort of that long, certainly in terms of you know, the demand for cars and the business selling cars kind of thing. And also we saw an opportunity to accelerate our market share and grow the brand to another level because, you know, all of our competitors, frankly, kind of stopped spending. So we continued spending all through that period when we were free. We had sort of no revenue coming in, but we had this massive marketing cost still going out for. And believe me, I mean, you know, as the CMO, that I had some interesting conversations. It gets to about week 5, and it's like, are we doing the right thing? But listen, we stuck with it. You know, continued advertising. I mean, actually, we were really rewarded for that in the back half of 2020. We grew our market share, you know, in terms of us versus other marketplaces. From 42% to about sort of 55%. Now we're at 59% this year. Wow. So, I mean, for me, it was as a marketer, it was a fantastic case study, of which there are many around, you know, in turbulent times or challenging times. If you invest and keep faith, it is rewarded big time on the other side when you come out of these things.
Yeah.
So that was great from the consumer side of things. And like I say, I mean, the market share now. I mean, we're playing a different sport now. You know, I look back at. Even in sort of 2019, you know, we'd be really, really happy with kind of 18 million visits a month or 19 million visits a month. I mean, that's a lot of visits.
Yeah.
Now it's like 25. Like a year
just
later.
Blew through that number.
Yeah, it's like we're playing a whole different sport when I look at the graphs and stuff, which is great because that's what we're here to do is provide the value through to the dealer partners who, you know, stuck with us and we stuck with them. And now, you know, notwithstanding the kind of site inventory challenge, but I think everyone's in a better place in terms of, you know, selling through and that kind of stuff. So that was a journey. And then on the technology side of things, you know, we made some modifications and brought in some new offerings. You know, we have the motor commerce product from Moto Insight, which is a part of Trader now. And so, you know,
good move, by the way. Andrew's an amazing guy, so
he is, yeah. No, and now actually Andrew's with us on sort of the marketplace side, so I spend a lot of time working with him every day. He's a great guy. And great experience. You know, I mean, you've spoken to him. Sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, his journey with the Moto Insight business is amazing. Yep. But yeah, I mean, through that piece of technology, we were able to light up kind of 400 dealers in the marketplace with a buy online button and a digital retail experience. So being able to move at that speed and that
timing must have been amazing.
Oh, it was.
Come on.
Yeah, it was pretty serendipitous. Yeah. But and now obviously, you know, we're looking to evolve that even further. Like I said, kind of, you know, in a way that makes sense with the adoption curve and the demand that's coming from users to do that kind of thing. But yeah, so a number of things from the offering standpoint. But I think the biggest thing was just the landscape has changed so much because of, like I said, those brands that hung in there and kept spending. And believe me, I mean, that was white knuckle. Like 5th week in, and we're still spending millions. When's the demand going to come back and we can, you know, charge dealers again? And anyway, it has been rewarded. So that's been one of the biggest things. But then, like you said, I mean, it's changed things in so many ways. And so it's, look, I mean, yeah, highs and lows for sure. But I think for all of us in the automotive industry, it's been a ride. That's
literally the best way to describe it, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, it has been one heck of a ride, and it's going to be very cool to see what the next 24 months, you know, is like as, you know, those inventory levels get back to normal, and, you know, what of these big changes or these snowballs that have been created during this time frame, which ones of them stick. And, you know, as a marketing person too, it's cool. It is just, you know, it's just a real crazy fun time to be in the business. Now, I know it's towards the tail end of our time, but before I let you go, because we've covered some amazing topics out there, for everybody out there that's watching and listening right now, who would maybe like to connect with you and maybe learn a little bit more about yourself, what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, I'm a big LinkedIn junkie. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Ian MacDonald, and there's a few Ian MacDonalds on there actually. Yeah. When I first moved to Canada, you know, I was getting my SIN number. They said, you know, what's your name? Ian MacDonald. They said, you know, there's like 500 pages of Ian MacDonald. So there's a lot of us here in Canada. But I'm the one that works at Trader Corporation. Autotrader.
There we go.
So, yeah, you can find me there. Yeah.
Ian, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a lot of fun.
Hey, listen, I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy with Jason podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.